In the dead of night, amidst the neon glow of Tokyo's restless streets, Kei sat alone on the edge of his bed, staring at the pills scattered across the wooden floor. His apartment was dim, lifeless, much like his own existence. The only sound was the faint buzz of electricity from the light bulb above. Kei was 29 years old, but he felt as though his soul had aged beyond recognition. He dreamed not of love or success, but of an escape, of an end. His only wish was to die, quietly and without pain, to slip away without leaving a trace of himself behind. "You alive in there, Kay?" A voice called through the thin apartment walls. His neighbor, concerned, always concerned. But Kay no longer cared to answer. He was tired of pretending to be okay, tired of holding on to a life that felt like drowning slowly. Kay didn't know when he started retreating into the darkness. Perhaps it was after years of betrayal, beginnings that turned to bitter endings, and families that promised love but delivered suffering. What fed his despair didn't matter anymore. What mattered was his belief that he had waited too long for death to come looking for him. And then that night, as the monotony of his misery stretched into eternity, someone did come looking for him. Kay didn't hear the sound of the lock breaking. He didn't notice the shadow gliding through his apartment. But when strong, calloused hands gripped his shoulders, pulling him to his feet, his mind snapped back into a chaotic swirl of reality. He struggled, but the figure holding him was unmovable. A tower of strength wrapped in a dark suit and a scent of expensive cologne laced with danger. Slick black hair, sharp eyes like a predator's. Ryu. Ryu was not a stranger. He had been lurking in Kay's life for months, his presence like a ghost haunting him. Those cold, dangerous eyes swept over Kay every time their paths crossed at the cafe, at the station, on the rare occasion Kay wandered the city streets. At first, Kay thought it was coincidence. Then he knew it wasn't. He understood Ryu far too late. "You try so hard to disappear," Ryu said, his voice a low growl, both alluring and terrifying. "But I won't let you. I won't ever let you." Kay was dragged out of his apartment into the suffocating darkness of a waiting car. No matter how much he twisted and fought, Ryu's grip didn't falter. The man was relentless, a force that couldn't be stopped. And yet, beneath the strength and control, there was something unnervingly misplaced in his eyes: desire. That night marked the beginning of Kay's captivity. Ryu was the rising star in a sprawling mafia syndicate run by his uncle, a ruthless strategist known only as the General. At 34, Ryu had proven himself as a bold, loyal lieutenant, earning the admiration of the men he led and the fear of the enemies who dared cross him. But for all his power, Ryu burned with an obsession that consumed every part of him. It wasn't money or domination that drove him. It was Kay. Ryu's fascination with Kay hadn't been love in the traditional sense. It was deeper, darker, and far more dangerous. To him, Kay was the embodiment of perfection. Not because he was flawless, but because he was broken in a way Ryu could cradle tightly in his palm. Where others saw emptiness in Kay, Ryu saw something he could protect, possess, and smother under his undying fixation. The General didn't approve of weakness. When he learned of Ryu's obsession with Kay, he saw it as a threat, a liability that could compromise Ryu's rise within the Mafia. Protecting anything, let alone someone as fragile as Kay, was not the mark of a true leader. And so, with cold precision, the General ordered his men to take the boy away. Ryu was no stranger to bloodshed, but when he learned of his uncle's plan, something in him snapped. It wasn't anger, it was a sharp, icy clarity. If the General threatened Kay, then the General had to die. Ryu didn't hesitate. The betrayal was swift, calculated. One clean bullet to the chest in the quiet shadows of a dilapidated harbor. The General fell, his empire slipping seamlessly into Ryu's hands. Now the syndicate was his, and with it so was Kay. But Kay didn't want Ryu. He didn't belong in Ryu's sprawling mansion or branded as the boss's lover by men who respected Ryu but feared his wrath. To Kay, his new prison was gilded but suffocating. Every meal he ate, every hour spent in the luxurious halls, reminded him of his one unfulfilled wish: to disappear forever, to leave the world and its chaos behind him. "You don't get it, do you?" Kay said one night, his voice flat as he stared out the massive window overlooking Tokyo's skyline. "I don't want to be saved, Ryu. I want to die." Ryu stood behind him, his quiet presence unyielding. Though his face remained impassive, his fists tightened at those words. "You think I'd let that happen?" Ryu murmured. His tone was calm, but lined with a dangerous edge. "You think I'd ever let go of you?" Kay turned to face him then, tired eyes full of defiance. "What is this to you? Love, obsession, control? It doesn't matter. I'll never feel the way you want me to feel." Ryu approached slowly, his movements deliberate, predatory. His hand rose to cup the side of Kay's face, tender but firm, keeping the man rooted in place. "You'll feel it," he whispered. "Eventually you'll understand what this is. I'll strip away every ounce of despair, every doubt, until all that's left is me." Kay didn't reply. He hadn't the energy to fight Ryu's growing mania. Even when anger flared within him, it dissipated into the void of his depression, leaving him silent. He neither loved Ryu nor hated him. He simply let himself drift through this new life like a shadow, waiting for the end that would never come. Ryu wouldn't let Kay fade. Despite his dark obsession, there was a tenderness to his madness, a need to preserve what he saw as beautiful, even if Kay couldn't recognize the beauty himself. Over months, Ryu forced Kay's life into stability. He carried him through the darkness, dragged him to therapy, shielded him from the weight of his own misery. Not out of compassion, but out of selfishness, a need to mold Kay into someone who could see Ryu the same way Ryu saw him. Kay, however, remained unchanged. For every step Ryu took, Kay stayed stagnant, a man frozen in the purgatory between life and death. Love might have bloomed in this darkness, but for Kay, it wasn't the kind of love that lifted him from despair. It was murky, twisted, a quiet reliance on Ryu's obsessive protection, even as he resented being trapped by it. In the final scene, Kay sits under the pale moonlight streaming into the sprawling estate's garden. Ryu watches him from the shadows, the weight of leadership, murder, and obsession etched into his expression. He wants something, anything from Kay. But all Kay offers is silence. "You won't give me your heart, will you?" Ryu asks, his voice low, almost pained. Kay glances at him briefly before returning his gaze to the sky. "I don't have a heart left to give." Ryu steps closer, the ache in his chest sharpening into something unbearable. "Then what do you have?" Kay tilts his head faintly as though considering the question. Finally, he replies, his voice soft and distant. "I have nothing, Ryu. Nothing but a wish to sleep forever." Ryu kneels by him, his hand hovering over Kay's, desperate for something to hold on to. "Then I'll give you everything," Ryu says. "I'll fill the void until you feel alive again, even if it kills me." Kay doesn't respond. He doesn't flinch away. He simply sits, waiting for the world to close in around him. And so, the two men remain locked in their dark love, a destructive, unbalanced dance of obsession and apathy. In the end, neither of them escapes the shadows that bind them together.